Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here in Maine, Brian way down there in Rhode Island. Brian, what is the good word from Rhodey this week?
Hey Nate, how you doing? What's the good word? I don't know. It's kind of business as usual down here. Well, I guess there's people are really starting to complain about gas prices, is what I've noticed. The price shock is really starting to set in. So that's exciting. We got that going on.
I saw I think that the average here in Maine, according to our local news, is about $4.30 at this the very first week in May of 2026. Brian, do you think that 430 seems high, low, or right on target for Rhode Island, given that is our average up here in the great state of Maine?
Well, I think it's 438 at the local gas station here. But I just did notice, going to work, if you drive to work in the morning and it's gone up 15 or 20 cents since yesterday. And then driving home from work, you'd be like, oh, it's gone up 15 or 20 cents more since this morning. How exciting.
Well, I'll tell you, Brian, I have the good fortune of working from home each and every day of my life, and so I don't really have to go anywhere. There was a month or two there where I was delivering packages for Walmart as part of their Spark driver platform, but I went to Europe, and while I was in Europe, the war in Iran started, and I haven't delivered so much as a single Walmart package since having come back. It just doesn't seem worth being an independent contractor and delivering Walmart's many packages when gas prices are ridiculous. It used to be $25, $30 to fill my tank. Now it's $50, $55, $60 to fill my tank. And so there is just no way that I'm going to be delivering packages for Walmart. But what I will do is make them deliver all my groceries to me. I'm glad to live. I'm glad that I don't have to do a commute like you're saying, but it is really funny. The idea of seeing gas prices rising, on both legs of your commute is a real slap in the face. It reminds me of some of those horror stories from Weimar Germany after the German economy was in a total tailspin. Right, the story is that they were facing such massive inflations that husbands would run home at lunchtime to give their partial day paychecks to their wives, so their wives could run to the store and buy the bread and the potatoes and the meat before the prices got put up. It would be you would want to buy your products at lunchtime, because if you waited till after work, all the prices would be higher. They were burning Reichsmarks in the fireplaces because the paper bills were more valuable as fuel than they were as currency. The horror stories from that era. And it sounds a little bit in that vein, the dystopian reality of seeing gas prices bumping up on both legs of your commute. That is tough.
Yeah. Well, let's see. You remember from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, there was that song, on the soundtrack, the Verses of Doom from Jeru the Damager.
Yeah, I do remember that. Well, I only remember it because you pointed it out in the years since. I'm sure I remember your reference more than the actual game, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Well, he raps on about how he bangs like Bloods and Crips. And, our podcast is going to take a turn for, the damaging. We're gonna have some Verses of Doom, I think. I think the shock in oil prices is probably just a mere aperitif or whatever for what's to come from the cost of fertilizer going up through the roof. So I think we're really gonna go through it.
Yeah, they say that the looming now, even if the situation in Iran was resolved this very afternoon, Sunday, May the 3rd, Brian, they say that we still would have months and months of economic dysregulation to face down. Even if the problem were to go away, the fallout is inevitable. And furthermore, the size of the oil shock we're facing is something on the order of 3x the 1973 oil shock, which, you remember I remember seeing there was still this institutional memory when we were kids of a can of Coke costing 5 cents, from before the 1973 oil shock. Of course, by the time we got a chance to buy Coca-Colas, it was $1 for a bottle, and I think it's about $3.50 for a plastic bottle of Coca-Cola now. But that is what I've heard from a couple different sources, the 3x the magnitude of the 1973 oil shock. I do suppose it's worth mentioning here that the 1973 oil shock was exacerbated only 6 years later by the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which further cut into the availability of oil supplies. So the inflation of the 1970s could be mere child's play to what we're going to be looking at by the end of 2026. So there's a verse of doom for you, Brian. Anything you buy that's shipped on the road going to be much more expensive than it was on February the 28th, 2026.
Well, I just remember during the COVID years, you'd go to the grocery store and there'd be like empty shelves and there's a lot of people like standing around looking concerned, and I think that's what we're in for.
Economic dysregulation. Yep. Well, yeah. Hopefully, your commute to and in and out of your new gleaming glass office tower down there on Rhode Island, Brian, isn't too long. So hopefully, you won't be too badly impacted. But it does feel like it's not so much, it's not so much that you're going to have to pay an extra 75 cents for this tank of gas. It's the feeling of things being out of control, right? The feeling of the roller coaster, ratcheting up to the top of its arc and then letting go, that feeling of going over the falls in a barrel. That's the scary feeling you get when you're surveying a grocery store that's devoid of any toilet paper at all because it's the darkest days of 2020, or whether you're seeing the numbers, skyrocket upward at a disconcerting pace on the marquee of your local mobile gas station. The feeling of being out of control, that really It felt that way during COVID, and it's starting to feel that way again, just to your point, Brian.
It sure is, Nate. All right. Well, that was heavy. I don't know. Well, should we talk about how the Bruins lost?
Yeah, I'm still nursing the wounds and still processing the shame of a ignominious at-home Game 6 exit for our Boston Bruins, but I will say I thought that the Sabres were a fun team to watch. They're both huge and really, really fast with a withering forecheck. And they've got some great skill players. And so it was sad to see the Bruins season come to an end. But really, we just don't have a great offense. We have a middling, mediocre offense. And now the word's coming out that a lot of our players were playing with horrific injuries, like Victor Arvidsson, who missed the last two games, or like Nikita Zadorov, who I guess had a totally separated MCL and was playing on it. So I don't know, Brian, what are your thoughts on another Bruins early exit and no Stanley Cup?
Sure. Well, I do feel like, Ralphie in A Christmas Story, when he has to resign himself to the fact that all the other children are going to get what they want for Christmas, but he's not going to get a Red Ryder BB gun. Except there's no miraculous redemption on Christmas morning coming.
No, it's just we're just gonna have to melt down the ice at TD Garden. That's hard times.
But
I will say, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it is nice. I mean, at least the Bruins, they just kind of lost and they didn't get jobbed by the refs, so that's always nice.
It's at least it's not. There's nothing worse than when the refs decide the game on your behalf. That's a bitter pill to swallow.
But I guess overall, the lack of skill, like the Bruins never really replaced Marc Savard when they lost him, and then they never were really able to replace Patrice Bergeron, and then I don't really think they're gonna be able to replace Brad Marchand either. So I don't know. The Bruins gotta get some skill in the top six there.
Yeah, and they got that one kid Benson who. Charles McAvoy took a swipe at with his stick and is probably going to hit with a suspension for that act of naked aggression and violence. But that kid Benson is really, really good. He is a Marchand-like player. The Bruins, we're trying to get away without a rebuild here, and they're just they're okay, but they're not going to be able to beat a great team. Like the Sabres, it really did feel like our goalie, the man from Anchorage and UMaine, Jeremy Swayman, was keeping our Bruins in this when perhaps they weren't the better team. That's kind of how it felt to me. I don't know how the Bruins would have fared in a second-round matchup against either the Lightning or the Canadiens, but I guess we'll never know. We'll see how the Sabres do instead, eh?
Yes.
Also, the Boston Celtics bungled their Game 7 yesterday at TD Garden against, I think they were the second seed, and they lost to the 7th seeded Pistons, or maybe they were the top seed and they lost to the
I think it's the 76ers they lost to, right? The Philadelphia.
What did I say? The Pistons were in Orlando. Yeah, it's the 76ers. You're right. And you're right. I was just down in the Sunshine State there, and I mixed up our opponents, the Boston and the Orlando opponents. But yeah, the Celtics were the 2 seed, and we lost to the 7 seeds. And not only that, but the Boston Red Sox are among the league's most terrible squads this year. So it seems. So my poor DraftKings betting account is down to a scant $5. We'll see if I can manage to keep that thing alive this summer.
Oh,
It's going
geez.
to be a case of making something for nothing if I can manage to turn my $5 into any more dollars at all. With the Red Sox losing virtually every game, it's going to be tough sledding this summer on the old DraftKings circuit.
It's a hard time for Boston sports. At least the Patriots are, making it to the Super Bowl.
Yep, they're the only game in town at this point. Yeah, well, as mentioned, Brian, I was down in Florida just hanging out with friends. I was at one of my buddy's 50th birthday parties, and he's a little older than I am, so I don't have to sweat turning 50 quite yet. But it was fun to go down to Florida. I flew down on good old Spirit Airlines, which is interesting that this week it completely shut down operations. I will say, Brian, I didn't get to see a melee on Spirit Airlines. Usually it's famous for the melees that you can find on TikTok. People, for what Spirit's like the most budget of the budgety airlines. And so there's oftentimes people who they manage to get a ticket or something, but they're confused about how airlines work, or they're not properly socialized to be in public in general, and they end up throwing hands, on Spirit Airlines. So sometimes you see those videos pop up. And every once in a while, you do get to see a decent incident. For example, on the flight back, some people before the cabin had finished boarding, some people were switching their seats around, and the flight attendants kept having to tell them, "You need to sit in the seat that you're assigned at least until we get everyone on board, because other people have paid in the seats that you're running to sit in." So there was some fun kerfuffle on that front with some wildly confused members of the general public. But I don't know, kind of sad to see Spirit Airlines finally going the way of the buffalo. What did you think, Brian, about the demise of Spirit Airlines and their abrupt shutdown on, was it Thursday or Friday of this week? Weird having just been on there from my perspective.
Wow, I mean, you got one of the final flights on Spirit Airlines. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the time that we flew down to Florida, and we were on Spirit Airlines, and some old lady, her bag was too big or something, and so she was being, walked out the runway or whatever, and she was like, "So I don't get to go?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, she didn't have a credit card. She couldn't afford the $75 elevated bag charge or whatever, so she just got yanked from the flight. That's right. That's hilarious.
But I guess I think
man.
it's probably for the best. I think the melees are likely to break out on Spirit Airlines because everyone's stressed out about like the insane. It's like the jungle in there, and they're just going to charge you $75 fee if your bag is too big. Yeah, people are being kicked off, and then it's just completely crazy. So it's probably for the best that we don't degrade ourselves with these low fares Spirit Airline tickets.
I'll tell you, Brian, I'm planning on going back to Florida in August of all the months of the year. Though my lovely fiance Tracy is very keen to find out what Florida's like in the off season. I call it the off season. Crazy people still buy them family, deluxe tickets to Universal Studios during August. These people are out their minds, but the heat is aggressive. It really is inferno down there in August. So we're headed down in August, and I was comparing flights. I thought about purchasing on Spirit, but we found a better deal on, what is it called? Breeze Airlines. You know this Breeze? You ever heard of it, Brian? It's a new airline founded by the same man who founded the JetBlue Airlines all way back in the year 2000.
Well, I've not heard of them.
Yeah, Breeze. I don't know. Anyway, it's direct flights from Portland to Orlando, and it was $195 round trip, which is just. When the price is right, you got to jump on these airline tickets. That was crazy, $195. So maybe Breeze will be the new Spirit Airlines, and maybe we'll get to see a nice melee to entertain us on our flight from Portland down to Orlando.
I'm sure it won't be boring. That was the one thing about flying on Spirit Airlines. Well, the latest I was in Florida was May. I think I came down to visit you in May one time, And the thunderstorms that rolled through in the afternoon were just extremely like you could just really feel the energy of the electricity and the thunder like crashing through the air, and the clouds looked quite angry, and it was pretty darn hot.
Every afternoon, you get this the huge storm clouds. The sun just beats down in the Gulf of Mexico, and just like in Maine, the weather in Florida blows west to east. So here in Maine, we get all the weather blowing off of the North American mainland, and it's similar in Florida. You get all the weather blowing off the Gulf of Mexico. So everyone who lives in Florida knows that during the summer months, let's say April through October, every afternoon you get a torrential downpour. And so you're always ill-advised to leave your moonroof open when parking in Florida, no matter how baking the heat of the parking lot might be. You never want to leave your windows open because around 2 or 3 o'clock you're going to get that rainstorm rolling through.
So are you guys?
Sorry,
are you guys going to go to Universal and stand in line for the Hulk for like 2 hours in the baking sun?
God, no, certainly not. We're going to try to find a pool and park there and just stay there and go nowhere. We'll go out to dinner at night and see how many people we can convince to come out. But definitely going to steer clear of the theme parks, man, during the heat of the summer. I cannot believe people voluntarily sign up for that kind of torture. Man, we've seen the extra corrals that are like they're like cattle corrals where you can stand in line. And, most of the time you just walk past all those extra holding areas for tourists, but they fill up sometimes. And boy, I certainly have had some heartbreaking waits in line at the Orlando theme parks. I remember one time I waited 3.5 hours for Splash Mountain, only to have the ride malfunction when we were like 3 or 4 people from the front of the line. And everyone tried to keep their morale high, trying to laugh and joke during the 3.5 hour wait for the attraction, but everyone's morale took a hit you could sense. Like it was like a detectable like drop in everyone's morale when they're like, oh yeah, sorry, there's something wrong with the line, so thanks for spending half your day in line for this one attraction, but you won't be going on it. Oh, man, brutal.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think that people must just not really appreciate the Florida heat when they book those tickets to go to Universal in the summer. And it must be like a breathtaking sight to behold. Not unlike flying Spirit Airlines would be just to actually go to Universal in the summer and see the families in queue under the baking heat. And watch people try to deal with that.
Paying $9 for a plastic bottle of water. It's good times. Hey, Brian, I know that your work back, you are now living in Rhode Island, but up until last month you lived up here in Maine. I know that every once in a while your work would send you off on flights. Do you remember what the daily parking situation is like at Portland International Airport? I know the parking is $8 per day at the bus station, which almost makes catching the bus to go down to Boston, more convenient because you can park for cheap. But do you remember what the cost was for parking at PWM by any chance off the top of your head?
I don't. I did all my flying out of Logan, and I got the company to reimburse my parking, and the amount per day to park at Logan is truly shocking. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's highly untenable if you're not getting reimbursed.
Oh, yeah, it'll be way more, be order of magnitude more than your flights paying to park at Logan Central Parking. That's why most people, it's like even worth it to rent a hotel room just to use their shuttle to avoid that horrifying fate. Unless, of course, you've got a corporate credit card to subsidize and underwrite your doings there, eh?
Indeed, no doubt.
Yeah. All right, well, man, we haven't even gotten to the big headline. We had to record because of my aforementioned voyage to the Sunshine State. You and I had to record a little earlier than usual last week, that being on Thursday night. And so if we had recorded on our usual Sunday schedule, we would have been talking about this bizarre attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that took place 1 week ago last night on Saturday night. Man, what a crazy story that is. I don't know. What did you think, Brian? It seems like, this would be a third credible attempt on the life of the Donald under bizarre circumstances, going back to July of 2024 in Butler, Pennsylvania. Crazy stuff, eh?
Yeah, I guess it's just hard to get. It doesn't really move the needle for me anymore, these attempted assassinations on the Donald. That guy Oz Perlman, he was just in the midst of doing some crazy like mentalist trick. I don't know if you saw the video, but that's what's going on. And Oz Perlman was on like Joe Rogan's podcast like several years ago, guessing the his like his bank account key pin.
Wow.
And he was doing some shocking revelation where I guess he like guessed the name of what someone in the Trump family was going to name their pregnant daughter. It's something like that is what he has written down. And I think that was probably the most fascinating part of the shooting to me.
You lamented that Oz Perlman, the mentalist, had his performance interrupted by gunfire. You're like, oh, come on, man. We're just about to see the reveal.
Well, he does the reveal, and then like they like the women are like looking like shocked that at this name he's gotten written down, and that's like right when the shooting happens. So anyway, it just really punctuated this crazy moment. And I wonder. It made me think mostly about Oz Perlman and whether mentalism is like how much of this is like a trick, like wherein he knows the answer somehow, and is just doing this elaborate stage play to make you think his powers of mentalism are unreal, or in how much of it is actually like reading your reactions to the thing that he says to somehow suss out like what your ATM code is. But anyway, so I guess that was my thought about the shooting.
Do you know how Caitlin and Kevin have twins? My friends from Florida have twins.
Yes.
One of their twins has one of these eidetic memories. It's really, really weird. Like, for example, I'm like passively familiar with the Cyrillic alphabet, this being the Russian alphabet, with all the Greek characters. But this kid can just recall anything, and it really is. It's absolutely wild to be in the presence of that kind of eidetic memory. It's like he has a shortcut to knowledge. Like he can just remember the capital of every state, capital of every country, what the flag looks like, and can draw a diagram of the flag of like every country. The kid can take a map of South America and draw the flag for each and every country. Absolutely unreal. And so it makes me wonder, like, is there something? It's almost like this kid is sitting in a different perspective where he can just see the answer. And I have to rack my my poor memory, which is riddled, from too much coffee drinking and trying to remember the answer, but it's like this kid can just see the answer. It just comes to him. He just is exposed to the answer once, and he just has access to that answer till the end of time. It's like he's just copying the answer right out of the pages of a book that the kid read, a year ago or something like that. Absolutely incredible. Feel that way about Dr. Oz the Mentalist too. You had said, is he cold reading people? Is he cheating by already knowing the answers? But the third possibility is that he actually can see this information or has some kind of a perspective that gives him a line of sight to this information that appears hidden to us. I don't know. What do you think, Brian? Is there any chance that that there's more than meets the eye here, that there really is some paranormal thing going on, or is this more of a Penn and Teller tier staged production?
Man, I don't know. Well, David Blaine, the other famous magician who's also been on Joe Rogan, like one of the things he's doing before every performance is swallowing frogs so that he can like spit them back up later during the show as a part of a big reveal.
Wow.
And like, so that's certainly a trick, but also one that requires like lots of practice and precision and effort to accomplish the swallowing of frogs. And I think it's on the Joe Rogan episode, but I can't quite remember. But I saw a video of somewhere, like he just asked someone to like pierce his arm with a metal point, like a skewer. And and so he just does like crazy things. So he has like he hones these skills that like no normal person would do, and are kind of hard to imagine that someone would have these skills. And then he's able to translate that and combine it with like trickery and sleight of handness. And so it probably is like a lethal combination of the two. Well, not lethal, but an impressive combination of the two for both David Blaine and Oz Perlman.
Effectiveness.
Yeah. Anyway, the mentalism is fascinating. It's the shooting, I don't know. Well, what thoughts did you have about the shooting? Did you have any not related to Oz Perlman?
Well, I have thoughts that are tangentially related to Oz Perlman, including some weirdness about the assassin once again. I don't know if you saw this, Brian, but there was this weird Twitter account wherein this account is like Henry Martinez, and the actual Twitter handle is like at Henry Ma and a bunch of random letters and numbers. But the name Henry Martinez is the name of one of the man who was convicted of the man who's convicted, the man who was charged with the shooting at the White House, right? The Correspondents' Dinner shooting. This account, so the name of this account is the same name as a former NASA coworker. The man who, the White House Correspondents man, the man who shot up the White House Correspondents' Dinner. His name is Cole Thomas Allen. He had a former coworker at NASA by this name, Henry Martinez. But that's not the weird bit. The weird part about this is that the Henry Martinez Twitter account had one tweet and one tweet only. It has since been deleted. It was there all week long. I'm just now seeing it's been deleted, after seeing this, seeing that the tweet was still up on like Tuesday or Wednesday. This Henry Martinez Twitter account back in 2023, in December of 2023, tweeted out one tweet and one tweet only. And that's the name of the man who shot up the White House, who tried to shoot up the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's absolutely bizarre. Like, why would this Twitter account just have the name of the perpetrator 2 years in advance? And why would it match the name of one of the perpetrator's former NASA coworkers? And then the other thing is there's a weird colorful design. That's the background, the banner background to this Twitter account. And even though it's weird, colorful design, the strange colorful design is like, it's almost like a magic eye image of the Donald standing before the American flag in the direct aftermath of the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting in July of 2024. I mean, it is really, really, really strange. It really makes you wonder, what kind of a reality are we living in? It's like in the Matrix movies, the black cats or the white rabbits, or like the glitches in the Matrix, right? The weird things that would happen that would let you know that you were in a simulation. And I'm sure we've talked about it many times here, Brian, but when Plato wrote his allegory of the cave, the suggestion there is that there's some force compelling the pilgrim, the seeker, the initiate, who's going to be unbound, from amongst all of his fellow prisoners and led out of the cave and into the true divine light of actual reality. Right? There's something beckoning that pilgrim, summoning that pilgrim out of the cave. There's something that draws them out of the cave. And in the Matrix movies, it's always the incongruities in the Matrix that betray the fact that you are living in some kind of a simulation or some kind of a program, and that the strange coincidences like this Henry Martinez, the same name as a former NASA co-worker, as Cole Thomas Allen, tweeting out his name with a Pepe the Frog dressed in a tuxedo, just like at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, for a profile picture, in a background that's some kind of a strange magic eye mock-up of the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting. It's very, very, very odd. I mean, it seems like someone had some idea this was going to happen prior to the event, at least 2 years prior to the event, and 2.5 years, whatever it is, from December of 23 up until late April of 2026. And so it really makes you wonder, what is the nature of the reality we're actually living in here? Why is all this? What is with all of this these odd coincidences? Is it some kind of a signal from the gods that we are indeed living in a simulation? What are we supposed to make of these kind of bizarre coincidences? This strange Henry Martinez Twitter account was strange enough, but also verifiable enough to make it to Breaking Points, Brian. You can watch their section on it from Monday or Tuesday of this week. So I don't know, man. Between the Dr. Oz, the mentalist there, whatever his name is, and these strange online coincidences regarding the shooter, it's like, what's that old Arsenio Hall bit? Things that make you go, And this is definitely one of those things.
I did see the Twitter hubbub about that, and I guess I thought it was pretty interesting. Also, there was some speculation that it's possible to make a Twitter account that, and just make like random names and do random stuff, and then after the fact, if it gets like validated, then you can just bring up. It's like when like people make stock picks send them out, like some company will send them out to like thousands of people, and then the one stock pick that got right, they follow up with those people, and then you can repeat, and then it makes you look like you're a stock genius, but you're really just weeding out the people who you didn't send the correct stock picks to. But
right, the people who you embarrassed yourself before, just never contact them again. That's an interesting strategy.
So there's like the possibility for some kind of confirmation bias type thing there. But I mean, on the other hand, there's also the crazy like Magic Eye image that at first it kind of looks like nonsense, but then you start, well, it really does look like Donald Trump after the assassination attempt in Butler, putting his fist in the air. But it's kind of like just questionable enough that you could maybe be projecting. I don't know. It's something you could certainly project onto, but on the other hand, I mean, the resemblance is kind of uncanny. But it's kind of like a weird image. But then the third thing is, what's the story with the dude being related to NASA? Do you have this pinned down?
It's just that Henry Martinez is the same name. This man interned at NASA. Easy for me to say. Cole Thomas Allen interned at NASA, and one of his coworkers at the time that this tweet would have been made, was named Henry Martinez. Henry Martinez seems like a fairly common name, so that could just be a coincidence. But man, I don't know. That does seem to be how the universe. It doesn't come right out and be like, here's the alien UFOs. Here is proof you live in some kind of a bizarre simulation. It's much more like a wink and a nod, like if you just got to Vegas and you were naive, and you went to the roulette table, you could be forgiven for thinking at the outset that the roulette game was a game of 50-50 chance, right? You have to be on the floor and see the 0 or the 00 at the two green spaces. You have to see them pop up a couple, 3-4 times before you start to realize that you're taking part in a rigged game that will make the house money no matter what, right? It's like you have to it's like life, you just have to see a few of these strange winks and nods, a few of these strange discrepancies or incongruities, right? You just have to start to log these strange outlier data points in your brain, and just over time you start to come to the impression that you are indeed living in some kind of a facsimile, much in the way that Plato might have suggested that the reality that we inhabit is some kind of a lower order emanation from a higher order reality that we can only perceive with our minds versus with our senses. And man, this White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting, Brian, seems like yet another white rabbit or a black cat or an incongruity in the Matrix that I'm just gonna take note of. I'll never be able to explain, and we'll just move on. And I'll just add it to all the other strange inconsistencies that betray the manufactured nature of the strange reality we inhabit.
Well, there's the business of all the NASA people going missing, and I don't know. Yeah, apparently this person's related to NASA somehow. But I mean, like, not everyone who works for NASA can be involved in crazy 0-point energy projects, right? I mean, there's like lots of people at NASA just sending satellites to some moon of Jupiter or what have you. So man, I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
It's like the intel services. Most of the people working in them intel services are going to be like patriotic people who you could totally get on famously with. Who you could enjoy a meal with. They're not like crazed lunatics. But that doesn't mean that that something is not rotten in Denmark, right? That the institution itself is not compromised at that highest level. So yeah, man, absolutely chilling stuff with respect to the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting.
Well, the Donald Trump as like some kind of time traveler theory where like, his uncle, John Trump or something, was responsible for getting all of the documents from Tesla's house after he died.
Right.
And
Yeah, he took custodian of all of Tesla's research materials, right? Isn't that what I remember? Remember?
yeah, so they say. And then there's like that book that's like about Donald Trump, or is it about Barron Trump or whatever? That
Yeah, it's about the strange adventures of a certain Baron Trump. And there's like a Donald figure who's like a sage in that book, and it's like a series of books we've talked about in the podcast before. I'd have to look up the particulars. But there's, of course, the Wreck of the Titan, the famous book about the Titanic that a man wrote, a couple decades before the. And I guess there was more than one. I got a text after we made that podcast. I got a text from our dad, and he had another example of, someone predicting the Titanic disaster or unknowingly writing what they thought was a work of fiction that had all the details of the Titanic. So it really is like something is really up with reality. I swear. It's very strange. It's the strangest thing.
Well, all of the time traveler hypothesis was a lot more interesting when Donald Trump was saying how accusing Hillary Clinton of being corrupt and talking about draining the swamp, and before he was getting us involved in these crazy military engagements in Iran. And so I mean if Donald Trump is supposed to be some kind of time traveler or something, I don't know. It seems like he's not using his powers for good. He's not using them to liberate the peoples from our reptilian overlords. That's for sure.
Certainly not. It seems to be doubling down on the military-industrial complex and the armies of darkness marching all over the face of the earth, and the descent into the end game, the hellish end game of capitalism. That seems to be all it's on. It just seems to be about enrichment for the Donald and maybe his family, and not at all about the redemption of the country, much to our disappointment, eh?
Unfortunately.
Well, I will say, it's like, man, as the big calling card here in the old System Failure podcast, this idea that reality itself breaks down when major economic systems break down, and the reason for that is that the authorities, the economic authorities, feed the rest of us a version of reality that's self-serving to them, that's economically convenient to them, but ain't actually congruent with the true state of the world. And so, this idea that, magic, it's just something that happens on the stage with Penn and Teller. It's not something real like people have assumed for almost all of history up until very recently. I don't know what I'm saying here, Brian, is that I think that we are doing a good job of keeping an open mind. What you don't want to do is be calcified and be like, no, it's impossible for Oz the Mentalist to be working his trade in anything other than a way. It's impossible for him to be working his trade through any other means than cheap stagecraft, right? That there's no such thing as magic, and that the reality that we're confronted with through our senses is at we should just take that surface level of reality at its face and not think in Platonic terms about emanations or dimensionality or other realities. But you do have to kind of be able to hold multiple thoughts at once, contradictory ideas at once. In other words, as reality itself starts to break up or blink out of existence, you got to keep an open mind and not insist on the old school conception of reality that we grew up in and that we inherited from our parents and grandparents, and that seems like bedrock reality, because bedrock reality is going away just like the capitalist mode of production and distribution. That's my contention, Brian, and I'm sticking to it. And so I say good on us for trying to keep an open mind as all this bizarre data point starts to flow in from the news, from social media, from political goings-on the world over.
I'm sure the data points will only become increasingly bizarre as time goes on. So, yes, I think that is good on us. I agree.
Yeah, we got to be open-minded without descending into madness. Let's hope we're walking that fine line perfectly, Brian. It's quite the balancing act to execute, quite the intellectual pirouette, if I may.
Sure. I mean, Breaking Points is basically it's like mainstream news in the new era, right? It's like a thing that I don't know, people who care about news are probably watching Breaking Points if they want not propaganda. And the things that get talked about on Breaking Points, yeah, it's a lot of this Coleman, whatever his name is, and I don't know, the Epstein files.
Hughes?
No,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
Well, the guy who with the Twitter account. What was his name again? Isn't it something Coleman or what is it? Who the name that got tweeted? The shooter from the.
Thomas Allen Cole or whatever his name is. Yeah, the shooter. Yeah, gotcha.
Anyway, yeah, we sure have to deal with. We have to like wrangle with a lot of crazy data points that I'm sure they didn't when it was like Peter Jennings on ABC News or what have you. So it's certainly a wild time to be alive.
All right, like Peter Jennings is going to give you nothing but wall-to-wall tissues of lies, but at least it's going to be consistent lies with what's on the other network, so you feel like you're in some kind of integrated reality rather than having no anchor holding you to actual reality whatsoever, and being adrift on the currents of propaganda as we are now. I will say that Breaking Points in the Wall Street Journal has been a great combo for me because neither one of those two outlets they're always checking their sources, and Breaking Points really pulls in the best of Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill's Drop Site News, which I highly recommend whenever I've gone over to the full Drop Site experience. And these guys are doing actual journalism where they have, real sources and journalistic integrity. And their payment model is Substack subscriptions, so there's not like corporate advertisers warping and bending and lensing the news before you get a chance to consume it. Now, of course, the Wall Street Journal, it's regime propaganda, but the lying that goes on in the Wall Street Journal is all about what they omit, right? It's all lies by omission, the things they won't talk about. The things they do write about are going to be well verified. As long as you steer clear of the intellectual wasteland that is the Wall Street Journal opinion section and stick only on the news side, it's a pretty good service, I reckon. But that's been my strategy for success, Brian, trying to not completely lose my mind or any sense of shared reference to reality with the rest of our culture. So I don't know. That's been my strategy. I think I've mentioned it many times here on the Old System Failure podcast, but I highly recommend a regime propaganda newspaper like the Journal of the Times, and then Breaking Points on top of that because you don't know what the Wall Street Journal is not telling you.
It sounds like a solid plan.
Brian, I don't know if you heard Mr. Russell Brand making the rounds on the podcastosphere. Let's see. I think he was he popped up on a bunch of podcasts. Did you happen to catch him on any of his recent venues as he took a little trip through the United States, a little tour through the United States to go on all the big podcasts?
Yeah, well, I listened. Mostly, what stands out in my memory is listening to him on like hour and a half or so interview with Piers Morgan, which I thought was pretty good. I mean, Piers Morgan would ask him these sort of pedantic questions that are designed to cause strife, like asking him if he vaccinates his kids. And then Russell Brand would try to encourage him to use his platform for like a higher calling rather than trying to stir up drama. Although, like, I guess, I mean, they were showing the bit where Russell Brand is like trying to find some quote from the Bible for like a solid minute and a half, and I don't know, they're trying to like use this to frame Russell Brand as like a kooky person.
Right. The backstory there is that Brand, of course, he is on trial for rape. His rape trial the date is October 7th, 2026. Another one of these weird coincidences, right? Another 00 in the great roulette wheel of life, a strange coincidence. But the idea is that for his arraignment, or what, I don't exactly know how the British judicial system works, but he had to appear for a hearing, a pre-trial hearing of some stripe or type in the lead up to his October 7th trial, and he appeared in the court. He went into the courtroom clutching his Bible, which is an odd move for someone of Russell Brand's history. He was quite the licentious reprobate, but has since reformed his sinful ways and has become, a devoted Christian. And so he turned up in the courtroom with his Bible, and he was telling Piers that he had, there were specific passages that were inspiring to him as he weathered the adversity of being tried for rape. And but then like Piers had asked him to look up a specific Bible, like maybe look up one of these quotes that was inspiring you during these dark times of controversy and adversity. And he was unable to. He just flipped around in his Bible for like 45 awkward seconds, unable to come up with a likely quote. So I saw that making the rounds, but I didn't watch the broader interview. Brian, would you say that it seemed like Brand was like he was using his newfound Christianity as to cloak himself in moral righteousness and rectitude, possibly hoping to be seen in better light by the British authorities for his many crimes? What do you think, Brian? Or did you think that the clip was taken out of context and didn't at all properly encapsulate how Russell represented himself on Piers Morgan's circus of a television program?
Yeah, well, they're trying to accuse Russell Brand of being like a grifter based on his inability to find this Bible passage. And you can see as he's like flipping through the pages or whatever, I mean, he's got like highlights on like every page and like several bookmarks and whatnot. And I don't know. Russell Brand has been on his current shtick. At least I was watching some of his videos during the COVID times. So, like, I don't know, like at least 5 years he's been doing what he's doing now. And so I guess I thought that it was really a pretty interesting interview in that really he mostly shames Piers Morgan for being a shit stirrer. And I thought it was pretty compelling.
All right, well, that's good to know. From my own perspective, I listened to Tucker Carlson's interview with Mr. Brand. I was stuck in the airport for some 8 hours on Sunday. The Bruins have humiliated themselves, and so I needed something to listen to. That's what I picked up, and it really did. It seemed to me that what's happening is that Russell Brand is becoming a threat to the entrenched power structures of the UK, and that his supposed rape trial is very odd timing, given his he's running for mayor of London, for example, so it just seems like it does seem like these supposed rape allegations are a little too convenient for a little too convenient for the entrenched economic interests of the city of London and beyond. So I don't know. Be interesting to see how all of this plays out for Russell Brand.
I mean, I guess when he was 30, he was like, banging a 16-year-old. And so I don't really know like what the laws are regarding rape in, jolly old England there. So it sounds like it is what it is. I'm just not quite sure if that qualifies as statutory rape. If it is, I would say it means, he's going to prison.
It is not. 16 is the age of consent there, as it is in the great old state of Maine. In fact, the age of consent is 16 for the majority of U.S. states. So you got to keep that in mind. I don't know. I feel like we should just have 18 be the universal standard. Such is not the case, and since it's not the case, you can't bust people legally. No, I think this is a case of like more of a I regret it, and less of a this person is technically underage. Still not a great look for Russell Brand, though, to say the least. Kind of icky.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, the dude was like a crazy, like womanizer. I mean, he's like Captain Jack Sparrow, basically. Yeah, I mean, he told
that.
He was saying some story about how he was like in a hot tub with a bunch of people, and by the end of the night, the hot tub was like oatmeal because it was filled with fluids and stuff. And I mean, so anyway, well, and he also talks about how like he used to do like crazy drugs and whatnot, and that's kind of how he became like aware of God through doing drugs, basically. But he was worshiping the altar of drug. I mean, like when this addiction, you end up worshiping the drug, kind of. But you can kind of, it paints the picture of something greater, perhaps. And Anyway, if it turned out that Russell Brand was actually still abusing drugs crazily and banging 16-year-olds now or something, well, then that would make me question Russell Brand's character. But, he's like married and sober and has been on this shtick for a number of years. And so I just can't imagine taking seriously, I don't know, the idea that we're supposed to like be questioning Russell Brand's character now. I think the dude's like almost 50, right? So
He is over 50 now. I think he is exactly 50.
So this is some incident from 20 years ago. And, if he has to go to prison based on, his previous misdeeds, well, then, it is what it is. But I'm not going to, judge him based on something that happened, 20 years ago. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Mr. Brand will be 51 next month on June the 4th. And yep, I agree with you, Brian. I think, look, I mean, it was for a while, the Me Too thing was believe all women, but I think the believe all women really kind of died with, you mentioned Captain Jack Sparrow moments ago, but I think it really died with the very public Johnny Depp and Amber Heard deposition, where it was okay, yeah, all right, this woman is just as much to blame for the ridiculous and dysfunctional fallout of their relationship as Depp was. So, yeah, I don't know. This does feel it feels like a 2018 Me Too era attempt to assassinate Russell Brand's character. And I just think just because the Me Too movement ran its course, and because that movement claimed a couple of innocent victims like Garrison Keillor, formerly of Prairie Home Companion, that people became aware that the Me Too movement, being a sort of example of mob justice, was completely incapable of distinguishing between innocent victims and the truly guilty, like Harvey Weinstein. And so, yeah, this feels like 10 years past this expiration date, this way of trying to neutralize whatever political threat Russell Brand presents to the calcified economic establishment of the City of London. So,
well,
very interesting stuff there, Brian.
I guess I think they'd be trying to denigrate Russell Brand's character in any which way possible, given that he's a threat to the political establishment. And so they got to take whatever plays they've got. Now, if this was 6 or 7 years ago or whenever Me Too was really happening, it might be more effective. But, I mean, they just got to take the play that's available to them and see how it goes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is the obviously the easiest way to try to neutralize Brand. I don't know. I kind of feel like it won't be successful, but all that remains to be seen, Brian. Speaking of podcasting, I'm wondering if you happen to listen to the members only edition, last week's members only edition of Dave Smith's Part of the Problem. It was a live comedy performance. I can't remember where they were. I feel like it was
Chicago.
Denver Comedy Works or some Chicago. Very good. Yeah, Chicago. That's it. So Brian, so you may have noticed that in your members only feed there were 2 versions of last week's members only episode of Part of the Problem. And when that happens, I'm always like, oh, let me hear the first one that dropped to find out why they're releasing the second one. And indeed, Smith, after walking off stage, left his mic on, and so we got this hot mic moment with Dave Smith. He left stage. He was saying thank you very much. Everyone was like, oh yeah, great set, Dave. Whoever was backstage was telling him this. And at a certain point, he was giving out his email address. You could hear him telling someone what his email address was. And then the most hilarious thing happened. I guess it was right before he gave out his email address. Smith got off stage. He returned people's cursory congratulations with his thanks. And then he went to the men's room. You could hear Dave Smith unleash a lengthy torrent of hot pee into the toilet on his hot mic. And I was like, oh, Dave, you got to take off your mic before you go in the men's room, man. It made me feel good about our podcast, Brian, because neither of us, as far as I know, we have not accidentally beamed out to our loyal following audio recording of either of us peeing into the toilet with the satisfying rumble of pee, splashing into the bowl.
Well, I suppose if you're doing live performances, they haven't had anything happen like that on their regular studio recordings, right? But if we start making the live rounds, maybe there's a chance that someone will hear us having a pee. So
I suppose it's only a matter of time. But I still was like, wow, at least our podcast maintains some. We're clinging to some threads of some sort of the tattered shreds of some kind of claim to being dignified or professional. So at least we haven't. At least I like the idea that at least we have a little bit more professional veneer on our operation, even if Mr. Smith has many orders of magnitude more followers, subscribers than we can boast, eh?
Well, like editing a live podcast, I can like you probably don't imagine you're going to be cutting anything out because it's just like one long thing, and there's like audience noises and whatnot. So like trimming out the dead bits or like mouth noises or something probably isn't something you're bothering to do. So I guess they just put out the raw feed. But yes, well at least we haven't. I don't know. Well, we haven't shamed or humiliated ourselves yet. At least that we're aware of.
Well, Brian, I don't know if you heard the news from up here in Maine, but our very own two-term governor, Janet Mills, we were in the Wall Street Journal the week before last for approving a moratorium on data centers. You know, these new data centers, the Amazons and the OpenAIs of the world, and build these new data centers, and they end up sucking up all the groundwater and burning through all the electricity. And everyone's water table drops, and their electricity gets more expensive because the general regional demand for electricity ends up getting pumped through the roof by these data centers that are voracious for power. And so the state of Maine was like, all right, we're just going to not build them here until November of 2027, just so we can see what's happening here and get a handle on it. And Mills vetoed that moratorium, so that we're just exposed to whatever it is that Amazon wants to do to us here. And then she announced that she was dropping out of the 2026 Senate race against Mr. Graham Plattner. Did you hear that?
I sure did. It's exciting news. I mean, it guarantees Plattner is going to be the Democratic candidate.
Yes. Yeah. There's still another one or two people on the ticket, but they're not anything. And so, yeah, I can switch my. During the 2025 elections, I signed up for the Democratic Party so that I could vote in the Democratic primary for Graham Plattner, only to find out that Maine last year adopted open primaries, and I didn't need to do that at all. But now there's not even going to be a primary worth voting in, and so I really got to get my name off the shameful Democratic voter rolls and back to independent where it belongs. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Mr. Plattner face off against, Senator Susan Collins in November for that Senate seat. Now that Janet Mills is going to scuttle back to whatever hole she crawled out of and count her corporate donations in private out of the public eye. Good enough for her. Glad to be rid of Commandant Mills. Did not love living under Janet Mills during the COVID regime of 2020. I remember she made it illegal to be outside on the sidewalk without a mask on. For a couple 3-4 weeks, we had to deal with that. I remember I stepped out of our apartment tower, the Hiawatha there on Congress Street, in June of 2020, and some guy trundling down the sidewalks "Where's your mask?" And just yeah, dude, this is not based on any kind of science. This is not based on any kind of anything other than bureaucratic idiocy. And I think Henry David Thoreau would rightly point out that we have a moral obligation to blow off laws that are, that aren't based, blow off, laws that are immoral or that are unjust. So anyway, glad to see the last of the ridiculous Commandant Mills, Brian. Which I like to call her.
Yeah, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But yeah, I mean, it is pretty exciting. I did see that Tucker Carlson expressed interest in this New York Times interview that he just did in interviewing Graham Plattner. So, and obviously Tucker lives in Maine, so I'm sure he'll be blowing him up. So that'll be exciting. And yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine. I guess probably a lot of establishment money will come in on Susan Collins, but man, you'd have to be a crusty old fogey to be voting for Susan Collins at this point.
Yeah, man. So, everyone hates Susan Collins, but it's worth remembering in 2022 we thought that Susan Collins was done and that this woman Sarah Gideon was going to knock her off. Sarah Gideon had all the polling going into the election day, and then just because people know there's name recognition, Susan Collins has been lurking and haunting the great state of Maine for decades now, so she's a household name, and that unfortunately carries it really exposes some of the problems with democracy. But that household name status really carries a lot of juice and currency. At the voting.
The thing about Sarah Gideon is I could not tell you a single thing about Sarah Gideon, but Graham Plattner, he's oyster farmer, Nazi tattoo, He was in the military. I mean, he seems like a real person as opposed to Susan Collins and Janet Mills, who are lizard people.
Yeah, they sure are, Brian. All right, well, Brian, I see we're coming up against the end of time here, but I really want to shoehorn this last little bit in, if we possibly could. Have you seen the latest Iranian propaganda video with dancing Lego characters? I put a link in the show notes for today's show. I wonder if you had a chance to check it out.
I've seen some of these. I probably haven't seen this particular one.
Well, I wonder, before we hang up the mics for today, if we could play just a few strains of the latest Iranian propaganda video. What they've done is they've put together a sea shanty about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. You've seen this one, Brian? Maybe, perhaps?
Oh man, I don't know. We'll see here. Hang on.
Oh yeah. We don't have to play the full song. I would say just give it a couple of refrains in case our system failure audience happen to miss this one. But man, it is really amazing to live in the time when this is what war propaganda is like. This is like it's extremely humorous. They've got Lego characters, playing this sea shanty, and it just makes Pete Hegseth look like such a ridiculous drunken fiend. I could not stop laughing at this video. It really priceless is the word.
All right.
This really reflects a sophisticated propaganda effort on the part of the Iranians. It seems they're winning both in terms of economic strategy and on the meme front. So, Brian, are you ready to treat our audience to a few bars of Pete Hegseth's propaganda video here?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
I sure can.
Okay. That means you'll be able to tell that's playing, hopefully. So here we go.
Drunken Hegseth, what shall we do with the drunken Hegseth? What shall we do with the drunken Hegseth? Early in the morning, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises. Early in the morning, he was drinking on the Foxette before the showtime. He was drinking on the Foxette before the showtime. He was drinking on the Foxette before the showtime. Early in the morning, carried out the strip club in his uniform. Carried out the strip club in his uniform. Carried out the strip club in his uniform. Early in the morning. Hi.
All right. So, I guess he's drinking before work and getting carried out of the strip club there.
Oh, yeah. What shall we do with a drunken Hegseth? I think that is so funny. I mean, the way that the band in the background, they have there's Hegseth, dancing around in the foreground, knocking back Lego beers. And then they have the Lego band behind him, beating the drum and playing the hornpipes. It's hilarious. It makes me think once again of Pirates of the Caribbean. We were mentioning Johnny Depp and Captain Jack Sparrow a little earlier in the program. And the hornpipes remind me of Pirates of the Caribbean also, with the sea shanties. And man, that is just an incredibly sophisticated piece of propaganda. I love it. And each and every one of these crazy Lego videos goes viral, right? They're Legos, but they're animated through artificial intelligence. And so hundreds of millions of people are watching these propaganda videos here on this side of the war, the battle lines. And I just wonder what kind of effect that's having. It's got to be. It's not nothing. And these videos sure provide comic relief.
What's the story with Pete Hegseth? I guess he isn't he like someone made this claim about him that he was getting hammered before work, and now he's suing some newspaper or something.
Well, that is Kash Patel. So Kash Patel, the erstwhile FBI director, also has a bunch of reports coming out about how the FBI agents have to wake him up in the morning because he was too hammered the night before. With Kash Patel, I mean, my assumption is that he has seen behind the curtain and he knows some terrible, terrible things. And he knows that he must now dissemble before the American public and try and become part of the problem, become part of the apparatus that's hiding the true nature of reality from the American public. In other words, he knows that he is helping damage the American democracy and feels that he has no choice, for whatever reason, feels he has no choice but to do so. And it seems to me that he's using alcohol to deal with that stressful fact. The report. Obviously, we remember the pictures, the videos of Kash Patel getting hammered drunk with the Team USA after their gold medal win out there in Milan Cortina during the Olympics back in February. And indeed, Mr. Patel, he does have his very own hilarious Lego video mocking him for drinking with Team USA hockey. So Yeah, dude, it's great. It's wild stuff, man. What a time to be alive. I mean, my fiance, the lovely Tracy, I think, is the one with the comment. But it used to be that war propaganda, like during World War II, war propaganda was like Bugs Bunny beating up Hitler. You know, it wasn't like that got beamed into Germany, and it wasn't like the humor. I mean, it's just the humor is just so much more sophisticated with this video versus the Bugs Bunny or the Three Stooges beating up Hitler, what have you. Man, yeah, it is. It's really interesting to see how far war propaganda has come since the World War II days.
All right.
Well, what do you think, Brian? I guess we're well over time at this point, and so we really must bid adieu to our wonderful system failure audience. I suppose this is the moment. This is the opportunity I usually take to exhort that system failure audience to pay us a little visit over to systemfailure.org. There you can sign up to receive the text versions of the weekly essays that you can hear the audio versions of in this podcast channel. Benefits of the text versions of the essays is that they have pictures and further materials from famous scholars. And so anyway, you can sign up at systemfailure.org to receive those text emails each and every Sunday morning right there in your email inbox. Yeah, furthermore, if you'd like to get in touch with either Brian or myself, let us know what you think of our performance today on the System Failure Podcast, or let us know if you think that we have completely abandoned any reference to reality at all and are now adrift on the high seas of madness. Well, you can accomplish that at the About page of systemfailure.org simply by clicking on the appropriate name. And with that, folks, I will be back on Thursday with the essay read, and then on Monday, of course, Brian and I will inevitably be back with another wonderful edition of the System Failure Podcast for your consideration. Can't wait to talk to you all then. Have a great week, folks.
All right, see you.